Students after the March for Life with their class, teachers, and chaperones after the march was completed, went to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, very popular site in Washington, D.C. They wore their hat, which is how they were identified by their teachers when they were walking around. It was a light blue hat that called the school color. It said Rosary PRO-LIFE. They were taunted by the security personnel and police, and they were then asked to leave. Not asked to leave, they were told they are leaving. And this happens in the United States of America as if that's not like Washington, D.C. is now a speech-free zone if you're pro-life. That's not the way it works. We've got clients already. We're preparing. There's going to be litigation in this one, and we're preparing that, and we're proud to be doing it. We're standing up for life, whether it is at the Supreme Court of the United States or now it's going to be a district court in Washington, D.C.
It's not like this was something that incited, like a language that incited violence or even had violent imagery. This was simply
put it back up on the screen.
Rosary pro-life. I mean, most people probably wouldn't even read it or notice it.
That's their school color.
Being pro-life in general can be controversial. Right now, of course, it's a hot button issue. But this was not something that really pushed any envelopes in terms of imagery or words. This is simply just pro-life.
I'd like to see if the American Civil Liberties Union will join me in this lawsuit. They're the champions of free speech. They used to be. In the old days, they would have. I'm not so sure they would now. But this is a big deal. And they wore the hats mostly, folks, because that's how they identified the students. You've seen when kids are in these events.
Well, I mean, they're coming after the March for Life. So a lot of these kids are not going home to change or going to a hotel to change. And it's their cause. It's their passion. It's why they're there in the first place.
These don't become speech-free zones. I haven't used that phrase since about 1987 because that was my very first case that was involving speech, and the government entity there decided they'd create a speech-free zone, and that's pretty much what they call it. And that's just not the way it works in the United States of America. We have the freedom of speech, and that includes pro-life students in Washington, D.C. That's not an enclave immune from the First Amendment. To the contrary, it's protected speech in an area where speech should be allowed. They're not disruptive speech. It was a passive message.
In reality, based on what they did to these students, the staff essentially converted the museum into what? An authoritarian area. Basically, they were excluding speech based on its viewpoint and based on its content that is clearly unconstitutional. And clearly, this is a case that the ACLJ should be proud to take.
We are. As it relates to the building itself, we've done the research on that already. First Amendment applies to the Smithsonian. It's not a separate entity, but it's considered a federal entity. For instance, if you were to slip and fall, they're immune from suit because they're a federal agency. So you can't be immune from suit as a federal agency or federal entity, as they call it, and then have the First Amendment not apply.
The mass majority is from federal funding.
This was passive protected speech. This wasn't even, you're not going to have a soapbox orator inside the Smithsonian. That's why content neutral time, place, and manner regulations are the way you handle it. But it can't be based on content. And here it was. And also a passive statement on a hat doesn't create an issue. And you're right. The price of freedom is you may see something you disagreed with, but that doesn't give you the right to censor it. You know, the neighborhood censor becomes walking around government buildings looking for people that wear signs or wear shirts you don't like. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. We're going to federal court on that. Our team's working on it right now.